This is your one and only spoiler warning. I pushed through and finished the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom's main quest, and though I have a lot left to do, I really want to talk to you guys about this game. Again, this video is for the few of us who left exploration alone for just a second to finish Tears of the Kingdom story. What the f? Hello world and all who inhabit it, it is I, the Great Saiyan, and even after 2 weeks, the novelty of Tears of the Kingdom still has not worn off. In an industry as fast-paced as gaming and with new major releases coming out back to back, that says a lot. There are plenty of aspects to Tears of the Kingdom, like building, combat, and exploration, but the one I think is the absolute best part is the story. Now, normally in stupid Nintendo games, we really don't get much of a story. Out of the top best-selling games, only a few have stories that we would consider not matching A through. Most of the time, these stories are told through gameplay with context surrounding what's going on instead of cinematic cutscenes and voice-acted dialogue. That's not a bad thing, but with Tears of the Kingdom, they did the cutscenes and they did the voice acting, and it's much appreciated. While I'm going to show cutscenes and aspects of this game, I don't consider this a story explanation. There is just so much to this world, and I don't think I'm the guy you're looking for. Try Zelda's channel. Okay, we have to talk about how beautiful these cutscenes are. They look amazing, and we have to give props where they're due. We've seen some AAA games released on much more powerful hardware that don't look half as good. That's not a knock at those guys and their games, but more of a nod to Nintendo and what Aonuma's team could accomplish with time and, of course, budget. I have seen some breathtaking moments that gave me literal chills. Just check out this final boss scene when we finally face off against Hot Ganondorf. From voice acting to the lighting to the clarity and resolution, which admittedly we rarely see from Nintendo, at least at this quality, it all comes together so perfectly to this masterpiece. It's really amazing how the story itself is told, but we'll get into that later. The game has two forms of cinematics. One is the pre-rendered, high-budget voice-acted cutscenes, like when the sages introduce themselves or something absolutely magical is happening. And then we have the B-tier cutscenes, which characters usually make grunting noises through. You can usually pan your camera to get different angles of character models and see off into the distance. I like these too because they serve a simplified purpose. They hold the story together well and make the high-end cutscenes that much better. These exist in all games, and the amount of them is usually determined by how much story there is to tell. Link, the main character, doesn't talk, so we rely on his expressions to guide us, and these cutscenes just fit in more since no one is talking instead of Link being the only stoic one. There are many ways to play Tears of the Kingdom, but the main way I've been experiencing this game is docked at my gaming setup. My monitors aren't the most high-end out there, but I feel like they serve their purpose well. But I'm sure this game will look even better on my QLED TV in the living room. The main way I think people should experience this game is on an OLED Switch. The colors, the contrast, it all just pops so perfectly. My TV is 4K and about 75 inches, so Switch games blown up on it can look a bit soft. I usually only play PS5 games on it if I want a full resolution experience. Having that 7-inch OLED screen less than an arm's length away from your face is probably how this game was intended for us to play, and it's been the most crisp and vibrant experience for me. If you don't have an OLED, don't worry, you're still getting a great experience, but it's truly hard to show just how great these colors look on this screen. Aside from how gorgeous this game looks, we also need to praise the story itself. From its inception to how it's delivered to the secrets it holds. This is one of the best video game stories I've ever experienced. Now, once again, I won't get into all the lore of Tears of the Kingdom or its predecessor, Breath of the Wild, but I do want to talk about this story in particular and all the moving pieces. Of course, you all know this, but just to recap, this story takes place years after the events of Breath of the Wild. How many years later? We don't know. I'm sure someone can mathematically figure it out using gamer logic. And while they're there, maybe they can tell us the difference between Calamity Ganon and Ganondorf. Anyway, there's this creepy and eerie gloom gunk coming from the castle. It's Ganondorf, and finding this set forth the events of the story. Zelda is transported back in time with the power of the secret stone she found, and now has to find her way back to the present era while Link looks from her from his era. Zelda realizes she can't force herself to go back in time after consulting with literal Zonai and other people who have control over their power, including Sonya, who has control over time. This creates a real problem. I thought that Link would simply go back in time and rescue Zelda, but then how would he get back? I understand we have to defeat Ganondorf by gathering the power of the sages together, but Zelda is still missing and we know it's connected, but surely one has to be priority over the other. I love that this game makes us go and find these dragon tears to uncover this beautiful story. This whole time while playing, I'm trying to figure out how Link will get to Zelda, but after doing all the dragon tears, we see that Zelda finds a way to Link, and it's by turning herself into a freaking dragon. And then she it's so good. This story is legit, bro.
Protect them all!
We lost Zelda? We lost Zelda. Wow. Now this is twofold, as she needs to also steep the Master Sword in light energy to restore it, but over hundreds of years, or maybe even thousands of years, the game wasn't too specific, in order to strengthen the sword beyond the power of Ganondorf, who broke it in the first place. Zelda turns herself into this dragon, and once we realize what has been done can't be undone, the stakes are high. I truly did not think we'd see Zelda ever again. We're just stuck with this dragon who helps us save Hyrule. The stakes were high. I couldn't imagine making that choice to save my kingdom, and that's what makes this story so beautiful to me. Zelda sacrificed everything to deliver the one tool needed to save the world, with only hope that what she was doing would actually work. Link and Zelda are two characters that don't follow a set timeline. In fact, Tears of the Kingdom is probably the only Zelda game that feels like an actual sequel. These games have nothing to do with each other for the most part, but the character of Zelda and Link never really change. Link is always a courageous hero, and Zelda is always a wise princess willing to do anything to save her kingdom. That anything includes turning herself into an immortal dragon. Once we defeat Dragon Ganon, we get that cutscene of Sonya and Rauru helping Link turn Zelda back into a human, as well as restoring his arm. Of course, I left out some things, but this story had everything. Highs, lows, hope, defeat, and as I said again, stakes. Most Nintendo games don't have that. We know Mario's gonna save the princess. We know you're gonna beat the Elite Four and the champion of the Pokemon League. We know Samus is gonna beat whoever is standing in her way and leave that planet, ship intact, and probably with a new powered up suit to boot. The nature of this world, the tragedy of its inception, and the lack of peace and hope anywhere just leads us to believe that there is no coming back, but somehow they do it, and without being so obvious about it. I knew I was gonna defeat Ganondorf. I didn't know he was going to become a freaking dragon.
My mind, everything. Sacrifice it all to destroy you. And cast this world into eternal night.
I didn't know Zelda would come back and help me in the final fight, and I didn't know that one game could be so amazing on 6-year-old hardware at only 30 FPS, rarely touching 1080p. Now the question is, why can't Nintendo do this for other games? If you played Scarlet and Violet, there's this beautifully shot scene in Area Zero that's the last fight between you and the professor of whichever game you choose. The story that leads up to that point is pretty deep for a Pokemon game, but the rest of the game lacked that level of polish throughout. Obviously they had budget, they just didn't really have the time. Metroid Prime is a great series that could take advantage of this style of gameplay. Metroid Prime Remastered is one of the best looking games on Switch, and I'm hoping we see more of a cinematic side to Samus Aran and her story in Metroid Prime 4, which could be coming out as soon as this holiday. We know that Zelda doesn't have a tight release schedule like Pokemon, and it has a more expansive world to build upon than Metroid. It's truly a series with the luxury of being what it is. It has no box to fall into. I've enjoyed 2D Zelda and 3D Zelda. I love Minish Cap and Ocarina of Time. It's almost not fair to hold any other Nintendo IP to this standard, but unfortunately, the bar has been set. Nintendo being as gameplay focused as they are, it's hard to imagine another one of their games being able to mimic this. Tears of the Kingdom has phenomenal gameplay on top of a fantastic story. I love all aspects of this game because it does all the aspects it tries to do well. Honestly, I'd like to see one more game in this format to complete a trilogy, and then I don't know what else, but that's also not my job to figure out. Story in games are great, but I'll always scream that gameplay is king. When you have a game as amazing as Tears of the Kingdom nail its gameplay on such a massive scale that it's all you see for weeks, and in Breath of the Wild's case, years, then you have room to gush over the story. Simply put, I love what this game is and who this game is. Gameplay is what? What are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish? The story is who. It's what sets a game apart and gives it that unique identifier that earns it titles like Game of the Year. I don't think this is the last video you'll see from me about Tears of the Kingdom, but for now, I've dumped a lot of thoughts. Get subscribed so you don't miss out any of my upcoming videos, and while you're here, check out my last video on Tears of the Kingdom where we discuss if this game is perfect or not. Also, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.